They don't have eyes or ears, but they can find their own food. They lack a brain, but some scientists think they can communicate, cooperate, and even wage war. Perhaps plants lead anything but solitary, sedentary lives.
They actively respond to the nutrients and the predators and the herbivores that are around them.
But not everyone believes there's a social side to plants.
If you talk to a layperson about plant behaviors, you'll just think you're crazy. If you talk to a scientist, they'll think you're crazy and wrong.
From nurturing their young to eavesdropping on their neighbors, it seems plants are doing...
Whoa.
Yeah.
And saying quite a bit.
It's the plant's way of calling out for help.
We just need to listen. For the past few months, plant ecologist J.C. Cahill has been crisscrossing the continent, researching a new book that focuses on one central question. Do plants behave like animals? An idea that seems a little far out to a lot of people.
If you talk to just a layperson about plant behaviors, you'll just think you're crazy. If you talk to a scientist about plant behavior, they'll think you're crazy and wrong.
And you can understand the skepticism. Out in the field, observing plant behavior is a little bit like watching paint dry. Unless, of course, you speed things up. They may not swing from branches or gallop across the savanna, but plants do move, and they do behave. And one of the ways they behave is through growth. But does all of this growth really constitute behavior? Are the movements of plants in any way comparable to this? Right now, this fox is hunting for mice, using every weapon in his evolutionary arsenal to find a meal. And this plant is doing pretty much the same thing. When an unsuspecting insect roams into a Venus flytrap, all it takes is a brush with two of the plant's trip hairs, and the trap is sprung. The bug is then slowly digested, providing the plant with much-needed nutrients. Unless, of course, a lucky victim manages to escape. For years, we just assumed that the flytrap was the exception that proved the rule. Plants don't behave. Turns out, we were wrong.
What people don't know is that all plants are doing this. All plants are not necessarily eating living organisms, but they're having elaborate behaviors above ground and below ground, but they're slower than the snapping of the fly trap, or they are happening in the soil so we can't see them. But all plants are complex, and all plants have complex feeding behaviors.
In fact, every plant on Earth is on a constant hunt for food, including the light they need to photosynthesize. And with the help of time-lapse cameras, we can now enter their world and see how they do it, climbing upward and tracking the sun as it wheels across the sky. But plants don't just need light to thrive. They also need nutrients, food that lies in a hidden world that's just below our feet. As much as 80% of a plant's total mass lives below the ground, in a secret world scientists once called the black box. But with the aid of new technology, we're now exploring that world and discovering that when it comes to finding food, plant roots are a lot more animal-like than we ever imagined. Not unlike this grizzly family, who are busy foraging for berries and other edible plants.
So when an animal moves through the forest and is foraging for berries, like a grizzly would, it will find a berry patch and it'll slow down and it'll spend more time there, maybe walking, without really going in a far distance. The plants do something roughly similar to that.
Back in his lab at the University of Alberta, Cahill has been using this high-tech camera to explore the underground world of foraging plant roots.
Some have even nutrients and some have patches of nutrients.
Yeah, so we have...
These grow boxes have been seeded with nutrient patches, and Cahill and student Pamela Belter have taken thousands of pictures, documenting how long it takes the roots to reach the nutrients and how they behave once they find them. It takes long hours to review those images, but the surprises are worth the wait.
Over here still. Let's go ahead a couple days. Whoa.
Yeah.
So this is huge growth. Over 3 days, this goes, what,
The sudden root growth confirms their suspicions.
Almost 3 centimeters.
Over 3 days, the growth rate of one root suddenly accelerates as it homes in on a nutrient patch. Then, just as suddenly, growth slows down, while the root, like the grizzlies, eats its fill. Roaming legs or multiplying growth cells. The mechanism may differ, but the foraging behavior is still the same. The question is, how do they do it? How do plants find the food they're looking for, both above the ground and below it, when they have no eyes, no ears, let alone no brain? Well, the feeding habits of this strange snake-like vine may hold the answer. It's called the dodder vine, the Count Dracula of the plant world. The vine has no roots and can't produce its own food, so it lives entirely off a host plant. And it has just 72 hours to find that host, or it dies. Its tiny teeth-like probes pierce the stem and grow into its victim, draining it of its life-giving sap. And this botanical vampire seems to prefer some plants over others. Tomatoes are among its favorite victims.